However, I subsequently realised that as a clinical psychologist, and I think this goes for most of us who work in the so-called health professions, and I say so-called because we don't really have a health industry here, we've got a sickness industry. We focus on what makes people sick, and we're better at we're quite good at picking them up when they get sick. But as a clinical psychologist, although I learned some very powerful tools to help people feel better, and we do have very effective psychological strategies for things like depression and stress and pain management, all I learned, and I had this epiphany one day, that although I was helping people not feel so distressed, I wasn't actually helping them feel happy. And it struck me, it might sound obvious almost, but there's a big difference between an absence of depression or stress on the one hand and happiness or well-being on the other hand. A big difference. And I think, unfortunately, most of the organisations that we work with, and a lot of the work I do now is working with companies and organisations to boost morale and satisfaction in the workplace, they're quite good at dealing with problems. And most OH&S people and a lot of people in this room are probably quite good at identifying what's going wrong. As a psychologist, I was an expert at identifying where people were going wrong. Like within minutes I could identify people's faults and weaknesses. It made me a good clinician, didn't make me very popular at dinner parties, I should say. But we're trained to identify where people are stuffing up, and we're quite good at fixing a lot of it. But as I said, fixing weaknesses isn't the same as helping people become happy and fulfilled and thriving. So when I discovered positive psychology, I learned that there's much, much more we can do for people. And this is on an individual level, at an organisational level. If we don't just focus on fixing weaknesses, I'm not saying we should ignore that. That's an important part of what we do. If people are underperforming, or if people are stuffing up, or if they're making mistakes, we need to help them with that, and that's something that we can all do. But we stop too short. And so as a clinical psychologist, basically I would stop once someone got back to that line, once someone got back to what we used to call normal. And any of you that have done some undergrad psych, if you look at most psych research, what we call normal is an absence of depression or an absence of pathology. Now, I don't want that sort of normal for my life. I don't want my kids to just have a normal life that's an absence of illness. I want them to have much more than that. And at the Happiness Institute now we talk about playing above the line. And that means not just stopping, when someone's no longer depressed or when they're no dysfunctional, but going much further than that. And I should probably qualify that by saying I'm not necessarily suggesting that anyone in this room can be a positive 10 every minute of every day. In fact, if I were to ask you whether there is anyone in this room who's a positive 10 every minute of every day, I'd probably go straight to the doctor for a prescription for lithium. But that's not actually what I'm talking about here. We do need to be realistic, and we all have and problems, etc. But what I am saying, and what I know from the research and from personal experience and from working with both clients on an individual basis and organisations, is that many, many more of us, many more of our organisations and the clients we work with could be closer to positive 10 more often. Not every second of every minute, but we could be playing above the line, living above the line. We could be helping our clients and customers, whatever we call them, to live above the line more often. And that's what these strategies, I said, they've been proven to work. We know what helps people do that. If we can help more people do that, then that would be a good thing. I'm going to make another prefacing comment. I'm still in the prefacing. I'll get to the main points in a few minutes, maybe. But talking about here, when I talk about happiness, because it's often misunderstood, and I'm not just talking about mucking around and having fun. One of the greatest myths about happiness is people often confuse happiness with pleasure. Now, I've got nothing against pleasure. And if you want to share a beer with me afterwards, I'll be happy to talk to you about that. But happiness is much, much more than just pleasure. It's much more than just having a good time. Having a good time is important. And having a good time at work is important. Helping our clients, helping companies, helping organisations create a fun working environment is actually a very important thing to do. And there are lots of benefits to that. But it's much more than that. And any of you that are, there's a phenomenon in positive psychology that's referred to as the hedonic treadmill. People who purely seek pleasure are often, the term that we often use is hedonism or the hedonist. And there's a problem with that because the hedonic treadmill refers to a human process called adaptation. And that's something we've all experienced. And that's that as soon as you enjoy something, if you keep doing something over and over again that gives you pleasure, after a while, it tends to lose its pleasure. We get used to it.